My stepbrother framed me and got me kicked onto the streets at 16, then married my high school girlfriend and bragged about it 30 years later. So I showed up unannounced and made his entire life crumble in front of his family. I was 13 when my mom moved us into Robert's house. He was her new husband and had 2 kids of his own. Mark was my age and Emily was 8. The day we moved, I was carrying my last box up the stairs when I looked up to see Mark staring at me like I was already a problem. That look stayed. It was like he had decided before I even said hello that I didn't belong. I walked into my room and saw it was half the size of his. My box of baseball cards, the one thing I cared about that used to be my dad's, had been crushed by Mark when he stepped on my box. No one said anything about it, and I was too scared to. Dinner that night was weird. Robert introduced everyone like it was some big family gathering. When my mom said I was good at drawing, Mark stood up and started pulling out soccer trophies from the living room shelf, one after another, until the table was covered. He didn't say anything, just looked at me and smiled like he'd won something. The next few years were more of the same. Mark would mess with my homework, say I didn't do my chores when I did, take credit for stuff I did around the house, tell people at school I smelled or that I cried myself to sleep. He was good at making people believe things. Everyone liked him. He was funny, loud, always had a joke ready. I was quiet, kept to myself, helped Emily with her homework when no one else would. She was the only one in that house who liked having me around. Things got worse when I started dating this girl Lisa at school. She was new and sweet and laughed at my dumb jokes. She liked how quiet I was. That drove Mark crazy. He tried asking her out before me and she turned him down. He never got over it. One afternoon, I got home and Mark said he lost his phone. He asked me to help him look for it. I followed him upstairs and he told me to check under my bed while he went to check the laundry. I didn't think much of it until 20 minutes later when he came back with our dad. He walked in shouting. Mark was behind him with this look on his face I still remember, like he couldn't wait to watch the next 5 minutes. Robert marched over to my bed, flung open my wardrobe and pulled out a bunch of Emily's underwear. My stomach dropped so fast I couldn't breathe. I told them I didn't put them there. I had no idea how they got there. I looked over at Mark and he was fake shocked, like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Emily was crying and kept asking why I took her stuff. Robert didn't ask questions. He grabbed me by the collar and dragged me out of the house before I could even grab my shoes. He threw me against the wall in the driveway and screamed that I was sick and needed help. Then he shoved me to the ground and locked the door behind me. My mom didn't even fight for me. I remember standing there barefoot, staring at the porch light. I knocked once, then again, then I gave up. I slept in a porta potty at the park that night. Nobody came to get me the following day, and I honestly thought I'd never see any of them again. 30 years passed by. The only thing I heard was Mark somehow ended up marrying Lisa, but not much else. Until last week. I came home from work, my wife Sarah looking like she'd seen a ghost. She handed me a printed email, an email that was from Emily. I didn't want to read it. I hadn't spoken to her in 30 years, but she told me I needed to. It was long, but the important part was this. Mark got drunk last weekend. He and his buddies were talking and my name came up. He started bragging about how he set me up and how he took my girl. Said I probably died on the streets. Said it like a joke. Lisa was there in the next room, and she finally heard the truth. She called Emily. Emily spent all weekend trying to find me, and she did. She wrote that she was sorry, that she never forgot what happened, that she missed me and wanted to come meet the family again. But the whole time reading that email, there was one thing on my mind. I should be over it, but Mark ruined my life and took everything from me. I was coming back, and I was getting more than just revenge. I read the email twice, then closed the laptop. Jamie was watching me carefully. Are you okay? She asked. I wasn't. I felt like someone had ripped open an old wound and poured salt in it. All those feelings I'd buried, the abandonment, the betrayal, the helplessness, came flooding back. But mixed in with all that pain was something else, something hot and sharp. Anger. He married Lisa, I said finally. That detail kept sticking in my brain. After ruining my life, Mark had gone on to marry the one good thing I'd had in that house. Jamie knew some of my history. I told her the basics when we got serious, that I'd been kicked out as a teenager, that my stepbrother had set me up, that my mom had chosen her new family over me, but I'd never told her all the details. It hurt too much to talk about. Now I found myself telling her everything, about the baseball cards, about the constant sabotage, about Lisa, and how she was the first person who seemed to see me, about that final day when everything fell apart. I talked until my voice was hoarse. When I finished, Jamie reached across the table and took my hands. What do you want to do? She asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Part of me wanted to delete the email and pretend I never saw it. Another part wanted to write back just to Emily, maybe try to have some kind of relationship with the only person from that house who'd been decent to me. And then there was the part of me that wanted to drive to wherever Mark lived now and punch him in his smug face. I didn't respond to the email that night or the next day. I went to work, came home, helped the kids with homework, all while this storm was brewing inside me. Jamie didn't push, but I could tell she was worried. On Thursday, I finally wrote back to Emily. Just a short message saying I'd received her email and needed some time to process it. I gave her my phone number and said she could call if she wanted to talk. She called that same night. It was weird hearing her voice, a grown woman's voice instead of the little girl I remembered. We talked for almost 2 hours. She filled in some of the gaps from the last 30 years. My mom and Robert had stayed together, though their marriage had been rocky. My mom had tried to find me at first, Emily said, but Robert convinced her I was better off wherever I'd gone. Mark had been the golden child, got a soccer scholarship to state, married Lisa right after college. They had 3 kids now. Emily had gone to community college, became a nurse, married a guy named Tom. I always knew something wasn't right about that night, she told me. Even as a kid, I remember thinking it didn't make sense that you would take my stuff. You were always so nice to me. I asked her if she told our mom about Mark's confession. She hadn't yet. She wanted to talk to me first, see what I wanted to do. What about Lisa? I asked. I was trying to sound casual, but my heart was pounding again. Emily got quiet for a moment. She left him, she said finally. Packed a bag and went to stay with her sister. She's filing for divorce. I didn't know how to feel about that. Lisa was just a high school girlfriend. We'd barely dated. It shouldn't matter to me what happened in her marriage, but somehow it did. After I hung up with Emily, I sat on our back porch for a long time, just thinking. Jamie came out and sat beside me. I want to see them, I said finally. All of them. I want them to look me in the face after what they did. Jamie squeezed my hand. Then that's what we'll do. We made plans to drive to my hometown the following weekend. It was about 3 hours away. Emily arranged everything. She got my mom to her house for what she called a family meeting. She didn't tell her why, just that it was important. Mark would be there too, though he didn't know I was coming. Lisa wouldn't be there, which was probably for the best. The days leading up to the trip were a blur. I couldn't focus at work. I kept thinking about what I would say, how I would act. I swung between wanting to scream at them and wanting to show them how well I'd done despite them. I barely slept. Jamie suggested we leave the kids with their parents. This is going to be intense, she said. They don't need to see that. She was right, as usual. We drove up Saturday morning. I was quiet most of the way, my stomach in knots. Jamie tried to distract me with stories about work, but eventually she just let me sit with my thoughts. We checked into a hotel first. I needed a home base, somewhere I could retreat to if things went badly. Then we drove to Emily's address. It was a small house in a nice neighborhood with toys scattered across the front yard. As we pulled up, I saw several cars already parked in the driveway. They're all here, I said, my voice sounding strange even to my own ears. Jamie reached over and squeezed my hand. You don't have to do this if you don't want to, but I did have to do it. I've been running from this for 30 years. It was time to face it. We walked up to the front door. I hesitated, then rang the bell. A few seconds later, the door opened. Emily stood there, older but with the same eyes I remembered. She stared at me for a moment, then threw her arms around me. "You came," she whispered. "You actually came." I hugged her back awkwardly. Over her shoulder I could see into the living room. My mom was sitting on the couch, her hair gray now, looking confused. Robert was next to her, older but still with that same stern expression. And there was Mark, standing by the fireplace with a beer in his hand, frowning. Emily pulled back and wiped her eyes. "Come in," she said. "Everyone's here." I introduced Jamie, then followed Emily into the living room. Nobody spoke. My mom's hand went to her mouth when she saw me. Robert's eyes widened. Mark's face drained of color. "Look who I found," Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. My mom stood up slowly. "Michael?" she said, like she couldn't believe it. "Is that really you?" I nodded, but didn't move toward her. I couldn't. 30 years of hurt stood between us like a wall. "What is this?" Robert demanded, looking at Emily. "What's going on?" Emily took a deep breath. "We need to talk about what happened when Michael left," she said. "About the truth." Mark set his beer down hard on the mantel. "What the hell, Emily? You said this was a family meeting, not some ambush." "It is a family meeting," she replied. "And Michael is family. He always was." My mom was still staring at me like I was a ghost. "Where have you been?" she asked. "All these years. You thought what?" I said, finding my voice at last. "That I was dead? In jail? What exactly did you think happened to your 15-year-old son after you let your husband throw him out with no shoes, no money, and nowhere to go?" The room went silent. Jamie moved closer to me, her hand on my back. "That's not what happened," Robert started to say, but I cut him off. "Don't," I said. "Don't you dare try to rewrite history. You dragged me out of that house and left me on the street because you believed I was some kind of pervert. You never even asked for my side of the story." My mom was crying now. "We looked for you," she said weakly. "For months, we looked." "Bullshit," I replied. "I came back the next day. I stood across the street from the house for hours. Nobody came looking for me." Mark hadn't said a word. He was staring at the floor, his jaw clenched. "Tell them, Mark," Emily said. "Tell them what you told your friends at the barbecue." He looked up, his eyes darting between Emily and me. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do," Emily insisted. "Lisa heard everything. She told me what you said." At the mention of Lisa's name, Mark's face hardened. "Lisa needs to mind her own business. This is her business," I said. "You ruined my life, then took my girlfriend as some kind of trophy, and now she knows what kind of man she married." Robert stood up. "What exactly are you accusing Mark of?" I looked him straight in the eye. "He planted Emily's underwear in my room. He set me up. He admitted it to his friends last weekend, and Lisa overheard him." My mom gasped. Robert shook his head. "That's ridiculous," he said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. "Is it?" I asked. "Think about it. Did it ever make sense to you that I would steal Emily's underwear? Me, who never caused any trouble, who kept to myself, who helped Emily with her homework? Did that ever actually make sense to you?" Robert looked at Mark, who was now visibly sweating. "Mark," he said. "What's going on?" Mark forced a laugh. "This is insane. He shows up after 30 years and starts throwing accusations around, and you're actually listening to him." "I heard you," Emily said quietly. "At the barbecue. We all heard you bragging about how you got rid of your stepbrother by planting my underwear in his room. You laughed about it, Mark. You thought it was funny." The room went completely silent. My mom was staring at Mark in horror. Robert looked like someone had punched him in the stomach. "It was a joke," Mark said finally. "I was drunk. I was just talking shit." "No," I said. "It wasn't a joke. You hated me from the moment I moved in. You destroyed my dad's baseball cards. You spread rumors about me at school. You sabotaged my homework. And when I finally found someone who liked me despite all that, you couldn't stand it. So you got rid of me." Mark's face was red now. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "And so do you." Robert sat down heavily on the couch. "Mark," he said, his voice different now. "Tell me the truth. Did you do this?" Mark looked around the room like he was searching for an escape route. Then something in him seemed to snap. "So what if I did?" he said, his voice rising. "He didn't belong here. Mom died, and suddenly this random kid and his mother move into our house, taking up space, changing everything. Dad was spending all this time trying to make them feel welcome when he should have been focused on us." I felt like I'd been slapped. After all these years, he was still justifying what he'd done. "I was 13 years old," I said. "My father had just died. I didn't ask to move into your house. I didn't ask for any of it." My mom stood up suddenly. "How could you?" she said to Mark. Her voice was shaking. "He was a child. We were a family." Mark scoffed. "We were never a family. You were just some woman my dad married. And he pointed at me, "was just baggage." Robert stood up too. "That's enough, Mark. What you did, it's unforgivable. Do you understand that? You destroyed this boy's life because you were jealous?" "Jealous?" Mark laughed. "Of him? Please. I had everything. He had nothing. And you made sure it stayed that way," Jamie said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was cold with anger. "You made sure he lost everything, including his mother." My mom turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "Michael, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Robert said you needed help, that we should give you space." I looked at her. This woman who had once been my whole world. "You were my mother," I said quietly. "You were supposed to protect me. Even if you believed I did something wrong, you were supposed to help me, not throw me away." She flinched like I'd hit her. "I know," she whispered. "I know." Emily moved to stand beside me. "What happens now?" she asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What did happen now? The truth was out. Mark's lie had been exposed, but it didn't undo the past 30 years. It didn't give me back my childhood or heal the wound of being abandoned by my own mother. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I didn't come here expecting anything, really. I just needed you all to know the truth, to look me in the face and acknowledge what happened." Robert stepped forward. "Michael, what we did to you was wrong. Even if what we believed had been true, the way we handled it was inexcusable. I can't change the past, but I am truly sorry." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. It was something, I supposed, more than I'd expected. My mom tried to approach me, but I stepped back. "I can't," I said. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." She nodded, tears still falling. "I understand," she said, though I doubted she did. "But I want you to know I never stopped loving you, never stopped missing you. Just not enough to find me," I replied. Mark hadn't moved from his spot by the fireplace. He was watching the scene unfold with a strange expression, not quite remorse, more like annoyance that his perfect life was being disrupted. "What about Lisa?" I asked him suddenly. "Did you ever actually love her, or was she just another thing you could take from me?" His eyes narrowed. "Don't talk about my wife. Ex-wife, from what I hear," I said. That hit a nerve. He took a step toward me, fists clenched. "This is your fault," he said. "You show up after all these years and suddenly my marriage falls apart? What did you say to her?" "I haven't spoken to Lisa," I said. "She left because she finally saw who you really are. That's on you, not me." For a moment, I thought he might try to hit me. Part of me almost wanted him to. It would be satisfying to finally fight back after all these years. But instead, he grabbed his jacket from the back of a chair. "This is bullshit," he said. "All of it. I don't have to listen to this." He stormed toward the door, shoving past me on his way out. Nobody tried to stop him. After he left, the atmosphere in the room changed. It was like we could all breathe a little easier. Emily made coffee, and we sat awkwardly in her living room. I told them a little about my life, how I'd survived those first few years on my own, bouncing between shelters and friends' couches, how I'd eventually gotten my GED and found work in IT, how I'd met Jamie and built a new family. I didn't tell them about the nightmares that plagued me for years, about the trust issues that made relationships nearly impossible, about the therapy I still needed sometimes when the abandonment feelings got too strong. They hadn't earned that level of honesty from me. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself watching my mom. She looked older than her years, worn down by life. I wondered if she'd ever been happy with Robert, if giving me up had been worth it. I wondered if she thought about me on my birthdays, at Christmas, during all the milestones of my life that she'd missed. Eventually, it was time to go. We'd said what needed to be said. Emily hugged me again and made me promise to stay in touch. I gave her my address and told her she could visit sometime, meet her niece and nephew. She liked that idea. My mom tried to hug me too, but I couldn't. I shook her hand instead, which felt strange and formal but was all I could manage. Robert nodded at me from across the room, keeping his distance. As Jamie and I walked back to our car, I felt, not better exactly, but different. Lighter somehow, like I'd set down a heavy load I'd been carrying for decades. Are you okay? Jamie asked as we drove away. I thought about it for a moment. No, I said honestly, but I think I might be, eventually. We were almost back to the highway when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something told me I should. Hello? I said. There was a pause, then a woman's voice. Michael? It's Lisa. Emily gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I nearly dropped the phone. Jamie glanced over at me, eyebrows raised. Yeah, I managed to say. That's okay. I heard you were in town, Lisa said. I was wondering if maybe we could talk. There's a coffee shop on Main Street. I could meet you there in 20 minutes. I looked at Jamie. She was watching me carefully, trying to figure out who I was talking to. I covered the phone. It's Lisa, I whispered. Mark's wife, ex-wife, whatever. She wants to meet for coffee. Jamie studied my face for a moment, then nodded. If you want to, we can go. I uncovered the phone. Okay, I told Lisa. 20 minutes. As we turned the car around, I wondered what Lisa wanted to say to me after all these years. I wondered what I wanted to say to her. The girl I'd known was long gone, replaced by a woman who'd spent decades married to the person who destroyed my life. But maybe that was the point. We'd both been shaped by Mark in ways neither of us had chosen. Maybe talking to her would help me understand some part of the past 30 years that still didn't make sense to me. Or maybe it would just reopen wounds that had barely started to heal. Either way, I was about to find out. The coffee shop was one of those chain places with too many drink options and not enough seats. I spotted Lisa immediately, sitting at a small table in the corner. She looked different than I remembered. Her dark hair had some gray in it now, and she was wearing glasses, but she still had those green eyes. Jamie squeezed my hand. Do you want me to come with you? I thought about it for a second. No, I think I need to do this alone. Maybe you could grab a coffee at that place across the street. I won't be long. She nodded and gave me a quick kiss. Text me if you need me. I walked over to Lisa's table, feeling weirdly nervous. She looked up and her eyes widened a little. Michael, she said, standing up. You look good. Thanks, I said. You too. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before sitting down. She already had a coffee in front of her. I didn't bother getting one. My stomach was too knotted up. So, I said, not knowing where to start. So, she echoed. This is weird, right? I nodded. Definitely weird. She wrapped her hands around her cup. I'm sorry about what Mark did to you, both back then and everything after. You didn't know, I said. No, but I should have figured it out. She took a sip of her coffee. Mark always had this story about his troubled stepbrother who got sent away. He'd tell it at parties sometimes, make it sound like this sad family drama. I believed him for years. I tried to keep my face neutral, but it hurt hearing that my life had been reduced to a cocktail party anecdote. When did you guys get together? I asked, not sure I wanted to know the answer. Senior year, she said, after you were gone. He was persistent. She looked down at her coffee. I was young and stupid. I thought his confidence was attractive. I didn't realize it was actually just entitlement. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I heard what happened at Emily's, she continued. Mark called me after, screaming about how I'd ruined everything, as if I was the one who'd done something wrong. Why did you stay with him so long? I asked. The question came out harsher than I intended. She didn't seem offended, though. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? She sighed. At first it was good, or I convinced myself it was. Then we had kids, and it just seemed easier to make it work than to leave. Mark was always charming in public, always the perfect husband and father when others were watching. It was only at home that he showed his other side. What other side? I asked. She hesitated. The controlling side, the mean side, the side that made me feel like I was never quite good enough. She shook her head. I'm not trying to make excuses. I should have left years ago. I didn't know what to say to that. Part of me felt bad for her, but another part was thinking about how different my life might have been if she'd seen through Mark back in high school. Anyway, she said, that's not why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to apologize and to give you this. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small box. It looked old and beat up, held together with yellowing tape. She slid it across the table to me. What's this? I asked. Open it, she said. I lifted the lid carefully. Inside were baseball cards, old ones, from the 80s, my dad's collection. My throat closed up. I couldn't speak. I picked up one of the cards. Nolan Ryan, my dad's favorite player. The corner was bent, but it was definitely from his collection. How did you? I finally managed. Mark kept them, she said. All these years. He had them in a box in our attic. I found them when I was packing my things. There was a label on the box with your name. I ran my finger over the cards, memories flooding back. My dad showing me his collection, teaching me about the players, promising the cards would be mine someday. He kept them as some kind of trophy, Lisa continued. I think he liked having something that belonged to you. That sounded exactly like Mark, taking something precious from me, not because he wanted it, but because he knew I did. Thank you, I said, my voice rough. This means a lot. She nodded. I should have known something was off when he wouldn't let me throw away that box. Mark never keeps anything that isn't useful to him. I carefully closed the lid on the cards. What happens now with you and Mark? Divorce, she said simply. I've already filed. I'm staying with my sister until I can find a place. The kids are grown, so at least there's that. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Despite everything, I didn't want her to suffer. She shrugged. Don't be. It's long overdue. She hesitated, then added, can I ask you something? Sure. What happened to you? After you left, I mean. Mark said you ran away, but I never really believed that. I took a deep breath. I hadn't talked about those years much, not even with Jamie. But for some reason, I found myself telling Lisa everything. About sleeping in the porta potty that first night, about wandering around town for days, trying to figure out what to do, about the shelter where I stayed until I turned 16 and they said I was too old, about the McDonald's manager who gave me a job and sometimes let me sleep in the break room, about the night classes I took to get my GED, about the community college courses I scraped together money for. She listened without interrupting, tears forming in her eyes. I had no idea, she said when I finished. All those years, I pictured you living with relatives somewhere or in some juvenile facility. I never imagined you were just out there on your own. I survived, I said. Made a decent life for myself eventually. You did more than survive, she said. You thrived, despite everything Mark took from you. I hadn't thought about it that way before. I've been so focused on what I'd lost that I hadn't really considered what I'd built. I should go, I said, picking up the box of cards. My wife is waiting. Lisa nodded. Of course. She hesitated, then asked, would it be okay if I contacted you again sometime? Not right away, but maybe when all this is settled down. I thought about it. Did I want Lisa in my life? Did I want any connection to that past? Maybe, I said finally. Let's see how things go. She seemed satisfied with that. We exchanged numbers, and I stood up to leave. Michael, she said as I turned to go. For what it's worth, I'm glad you found happiness. You deserved better than what happened to you. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak, and walked out of the coffee shop. Jamie was waiting across the street. She stood up when she saw me, concern on her face. You okay? She asked. I showed her the box of baseball cards and explained what Lisa had given me. We walked back to our car in silence, my mind spinning with everything that had happened. As we drove out of town, I felt strange. Not closure exactly. I wasn't sure that was possible after everything that had happened, but something had shifted. The weight I'd been carrying for 30 years felt different somehow. What are you thinking? Jamie asked after we'd been driving for a while. I'm thinking about calling Emily when we get home, I said. Maybe inviting her to visit us sometime. What about your mom? Jamie asked carefully. I sighed. I don't know. That's more complicated. You've got time to figure it out, she said. There's no rush. She was right. After 30 years, a few more months or even years wouldn't matter. I could take my time deciding what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with my mother. We drove in silence for a while. I kept thinking about Mark, about how he'd kept my dad's baseball cards all these years, how he'd married Lisa, how he'd built his entire life around taking things from me and then pretending I never existed. You know what's weird? I said finally. Mark ruined my life, but I ended up with a better one than he has. Jamie glanced over at me. What do you mean? He's losing everything now. His wife, his reputation, probably his relationship with his parents. And for what? Because he couldn't stand sharing his house with a 13-year-old kid 30 years ago. Some people create their own karma, Jamie said. I nodded, looking out the window at the passing landscape. I guess so. When we got home the next day, I put the box of baseball cards on our mantle. Jason and Lily were curious about them, so I told them they had belonged to their grandfather, my dad. I didn't tell them the whole story of how I lost them and got them back. That could wait until they were older. That night, I got an email from Emily with photos of her family. Her husband Tom seemed nice in the pictures. They had a 10-year-old daughter named Hannah, who looked a lot like Emily had at that age. I showed the photos to Jamie and the kids. Is that your sister? Jason asked. Half-sister, I corrected automatically, then stopped myself. Actually, just sister. She's my sister. I sent Emily some photos of our family in return. It felt strange but good, like opening a door I'd kept locked for decades. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized my mom's handwriting on the envelope. I set it on my desk and left it there for 3 days before I finally opened it. It was long, 5 pages of her small, neat writing. She apologized over and over. She explained how Robert had convinced her I needed tough love, how Mark had manipulated everyone, how she'd tried to find me but didn't know where to look. She wrote about her regrets, her shame, her hope that someday I might forgive her. I read it twice, then put it back in the envelope. I wasn't ready to respond yet. Maybe I never would be, but I didn't throw it away either. The following month, Emily and her family came to visit us. It was awkward at first. 30 years is a long time, but the kids broke the ice. Jason and Hannah hit it off immediately, comparing video games and YouTube channels. By the end of the weekend, it felt almost normal, like we were just a regular family catching up after too much time apart. Before they left, Emily asked if I'd heard from our mom. She sent me a letter, I admitted. Are you going to write back? She asked. I'm thinking about it, I said, and I was. Not right away, but maybe someday. As for Mark, I heard through Emily that he'd moved out of state after the divorce was finalized. Lisa got the house and most of their assets. Apparently, he'd been telling people I'd shown up demanding money, threatening to make up lies about him if he didn't pay. Nobody believed him this time. Sometimes I wonder if he ever thinks about what he did, if he ever feels guilty. Probably not. People like Mark don't change. They just find new people to manipulate, new ways to make themselves feel important. But that's not my problem anymore. I have my family, my job, my life. I have my dad's baseball cards back. I have a sister again. And I have the knowledge that in the end, the truth came out. That night, after Emily left, I sat on our back porch looking at the stars. Jamie came out and sat beside me, not saying anything, just being there. I reached over and took her hand. Thank you, I said. For what? For being my family when I didn't have one. She squeezed my hand. You've always had a family, Michael. You just had to build it yourself. I nodded, looking up at the night sky. She was right. Family isn't just who you're born to or who raises you. Sometimes it's who you choose and who chooses you back. I still don't know if I'll ever fully reconcile with my mom. I don't know if Emily and I will stay close or drift apart again. I don't know if Lisa will call me someday or if that chapter is closed for good. But for the first time in 30 years, I feel like I have options. Like the past doesn't have to define my future anymore. And that's something Mark can never take away from me.